Welcome, everybody. This is my podcast with Saad Mirza, who is the system engineer slash sales engineer at Cisco. And we both work in the same company. I thought it will be good for everybody to understand and learn from Saad what an SE does in Cisco. And I will introduce Saad to you in a minute. Saad, thank you very much spending time with us. Why don't you share your background, your educational background, and how you became a Cisco SE in your corporate career? So why don't you share this with us?
Thanks, Yasin. Thanks for having me. As Yasin said, my name is Saad Mirza. I'm a Yasin's co-worker. We work together at Cisco. Um, so how I came into this role, I did my bachelor's back in Pakistan. Did my bachelor's in electrical engineering, and soon after that, soon after finishing, I came to Canada. I did my master's here in computer networks, and even though my bachelor's was electrical engineering, but most of my time has been spent in computer networks, right? So I've been working on Cisco partners mostly, like Bell, Allstream. Those are the kind of partners that I worked with before moving into Cisco and doing the current role that I'm doing now.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. So, you mentioned that from graduation all the way to masters, of course, there's a lot of time spent. Can you also share with us what other certifications that you did outside your graduation degree and your postgraduate?
So, good question, Yasin. So when I came to Canada, one thing I soon realized was that I was not going to get a job with my bachelor's from Pakistan, and at that time I was not I had not been admitted to my master's program, right? So I came as an immigrant. I started. I was not finding the right kind of job, so I had to do certification. So I started off with CCNA, then did CCNP, and then I was able to lucky enough to find a job. But then I kept I even did a CCI. So yeah, I have like all facets of all Cisco certifications.
You spend your time working all day with Cisco. What are the personal hobbies that you have, and where you want to spend your leisure time outside of your work?
I think before the pandemic, I was spending some time in the gym, every day. I was also playing cricket in summers. But since the pandemic, most of the time is spent like it's either working or spending time with the families. We try to go out on long drives. But yeah, that's the only entertainment we have nowadays.
Unfortunately, pandemic has changed everything the way we used to do, right? So definitely,
Exactly.
My lifestyle is also completely changed, since the pandemic happened. And
another thing, and Yasin, you're probably going to agree with me that since the COVID hit, I feel we are working more, right? So no longer 8 hours a day. It's like you got to do whatever you got to do, right? You got to get the job
I agree.
done.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, working from home, it's actually you end up putting more hours, right? Because you don't drive to work, you don't feel tired that way, but then you end up, working more hours because you don't realize that you are still in the office, right? So that's I think it's the truth for this new normal for everybody who is working from home. And it will be interesting to see how this will evolve going forward. Even though when we will have this lockdown over, I think we will see this continue, the trend to be continued. Okay, thanks for this, Saad. So let's go into further more of our discussions. So you are working as a SE in Cisco, right? So how do you define SE role in simple words, especially for the people who are still in college or who are still in their early in career? How they can become SE in an organization like Cisco?
So I mean, that's a great question, Yasin. So SE, I mean, if you want to think of an SE, it stands for Systems Engineer, and I mean, this is an industry standard term that a lot of the companies have. Like some people call them solution architects, Cisco call them SEs, and but what you really are, I mean, you're a technical person who works for like one of the vendors, could be Microsoft, could be Cisco, could be Juniper, whoever, right? But you are like for your customer, you are actually their face at Cisco, right? So even though I work for Cisco, but I kind of represent my customer there, right? So when I go and my customer is looking at something, I don't look at it from Cisco's lens. I look at it from my customer lens, and then I bring back the requirement to Cisco. That okay, my customer needs this, and how can we help them out, right? So we got to put on the customer lens from that perspective. So and you gotta understand the whole architecture kind of thing. And I know with evolving times, it's hard for me or for any SC to understand the whole architecture because Cisco does so much, and we can only focus on like a couple of areas. So my focus is the collaboration, but I mean, when I'm talking to the customer thinks that because I work for Cisco, I know the whole thing. But yeah, so I mean, we are customers' lens into our organization. That's pretty much what SE is, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's more so as at the core, we are all engineers, even though we are labeled as system engineers or sales engineers. But I think our ultimate goal is to solve customer business problems using technology. So whether you're
Right.
working for Cisco or Microsoft or IBM or Google, the principle of this role is basically to help customers solve business problems
Exactly.
using
Yeah.
your vendor solution. So okay, that's good. And within your current SE role, I imagine you work with multiple organizations in Cisco, right? So what type of typical organizations or teams do you work in your day-to-day job?
So I kind of interact with a lot of people within Cisco for my day-to-day job, right? So I'm an SC. Normally, an SC is paired with an account manager, right? So SC and account manager, they're like this, they're very close. So we would like to think, so I would like to think myself as the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer for our customers, and the account manager thinks of himself as, the CEO for the customer, right? So we kind of think from their lens. So, I mean, we are the people from the sales perspective, but from within Cisco, we have to deal with a lot of different teams. For example, for escalations with any technical assistance, right? Cisco has the TAC. So I'm like at any given time, I'm talking to I'm talking to the TAC engineers, or the TAC managers dealing with some escalations. But if the customer has ordered something and they are not getting the product in time, I'm talking to the logistics people, just making sure, okay, where is the order for them? Or could be talking to the licensing team, okay, guys, the customers ordered this, where is the license for them, right? So, yeah, I mean, so pretty much the whole Cisco we are talking to, right? And we have somebody called the BU, business unit, which is the engineering team. They come up with the products, and so I also talk to them, tell them that, okay, this is what the customer wants to see in the newer products. I mean, can you make this a part of the roadmap, for the upcoming products, right? So that's also part of the job that I have to do from time to time.
Yeah, I really like when you mentioned the CTO keyword for NSE. So for those who do not understand, this concept is basically SE, we treat that SE is a technical owner of the entire process. So whenever you work with a customer account, you are the technical expert or the advisor from the vendor perspective. So we label that person as a CTO of your own account. So I
Right.
really like when you use that term. So I think people who are listening or watching this will certainly relate to it.
Yeah. And sorry, Yasin, just I'm going to add one quick note there. I mean, so even though we are part of the sales, but we don't necessarily have to sell all the time, right? So I mean, if we can save the customer money somehow, by doing a business process, that's how we build accountability, right? So the customer is not going to trust us if we are always about selling.
Of course.
We're gonna solve their problems, and along the way, if we can tell them, guys, you're doing this way, but if you do it this way, this is even better, and we can sell, that's better, right? But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is not selling all the time; it's helping them, whatever they need.
Absolutely. I think you nailed another very good point here, because one of the tasks for an SE to become a trusted advisor, and you can only become a trusted advisor when you help customer, not only solving their problems, but also saving their money in terms of providing a more effective and economical solution, right? So that's really an important part of the role.
Right.
Okay, so while you work with these multiple organizations, do you see any friction between sales and any organization inside Cisco? And if you do, can you share with us any example?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so friction within Cisco mostly. I mean, if a customer is looking for a feature, we go back to the BU and tell them that, okay, guys, we really need this feature for the customer, right? And there's sometimes there's friction because Cisco is a big ship, right? So it's not easy to ask BU for any features which they can produce, right? So usually, we have like roadmaps which are like 1 or 2 years in advance, right? So moving a big ship like that, I mean, there's friction. There could be friction, potential friction. I wouldn't say that we have friction, but yeah, I mean, there could be friction, or there could be some challenges, working with TAC because TAC sometimes they're just working on a one specific problem for the customer, whereas as an SE, I understand the whole picture for the customer, and so the TAC is providing them one recommendation, but the customer can't really implement that recommendation, looking at the whole picture, right? So that can be a challenge sometimes.
In any vendor, I think there is always a professional services organization, and we can call it differently. Some organizations call them advanced services or professional services or customer success. And I'm sure that you also bump into any of those organizations as well. So have you run into a situation where the sales team have sold a solution, but when it comes to implementing it by using professional services team, um, that's not the case. Like, they don't really see that solution fitting in their role. So have you bumped into any of these situations, and how do you solve these kind of challenges?
Yasin, so not specifically into services, because I used to do advanced services before, which is professional services from Cisco. So I've done both. So knock on wood, nothing on that side. But what I've seen in the past is some challenges with the supply chain, right? So we told the customer that we can execute on this and we can provide you the hardware, but customers waiting for the hardware, and they have a deadline that they have to stick by, and Cisco is not able to provide them the hardware because of whatever the shortages of silicon or whatever, right? So those kind of challenge happens, and we try to work around those challenges. Maybe get just get them loaner hardware from Cisco, or maybe just go and check in the lab. Cisco has a lab, we can go in the lab and find out if the equipment is not in use, maybe ship that to the customer. So yeah, so there are
Mhm.
challenges like that which
Yeah,
we
and
have to work
we
around.
yeah, I think and we saw these challenges during pandemic where a lot of factories were short-staffed, or they had some um, supply chain issues from their providers, and of course that has impacted our whole supply chain, from factory to the end customer. So
Right.
that I think that's a good example. Um, with regards to ticket escalations or tag escalations, how so I know that an NSC has to be engaged in that kind of escalations from day-to-day activities. But how often it happens, and how much time you have to spend on these post-sale escalation processes?
So, okay, so this is an interesting question. So, uh, there's this part of the question now of how much time I would like to spend, and how much time I actually spend, right? So, uh, so I would like to spend like as little time as possible on these escalations, but that takes, like, maybe I would say that 20% of my time sometimes, right? Because if something is not happening right, customer, like, I'm the default route for that, right? So customer reaches out to me, they'll pick up the phone, they'll call Saad because they know me. They're like, okay, Saad, we have this case open with Cisco. The engineer is not responding. On, can you help us out, right? So yeah, so this is a constant thing that I have to take care of, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think this is a very good point for people to understand. As a good SE, you should not be spending a lot of time on post-sale activities because that's not your primary objective. Your primary objective is to helping account teams sell more products and solutions. But ultimately, because as you said, you are the default route for your customers to contact your vendor. Whenever something breaks or something doesn't work, then you end up, being sucked into this whole escalation process. And
Right.
and I think you have to have, your back office support team helping you in terms of, um, resolving those escalations as soon as possible, because otherwise you as an SE will end up spending more time, which is of course not efficient for your own performance.
Right.
Okay, thanks for sharing with this. uh, so for the young engineers or the students who are still in their undergraduate role, what advice would you give them? And not only to them, but also who are still in their early career, like who are just, graduated last year or 2 years before and then still in their, junior roles. What advice or suggestion would you give them in terms of exploring, opportunities in the sales engineering type of role?
So like I said, I came from the post sales, which was like advanced services or professional services role, and I've been in sales, for last 2, 3 years, and I'm living every bit of it, right? So I don't miss those long nights that I used to spend doing the cutovers and stuff like that, right? So which are part of any engineer's life. So I mean, so sales is good in that regard, and I would never like to go back there, right? So, so yeah, I mean, this is very, I mean, I love it, but for to answer your question, like what do people have to do now? And things are changing so quickly, right? Yasin, we know this, right? When I started off my career, and maybe I started my career some time ago, but even if you don't want to go back that much, I mean, still a few years ago, people were still doing all the configuration on the routers and switches, on the command line, right? And that is changing, right? We have intent-based networking now, and things are evolving, right? And they're evolving fast, right? Things are moving to the cloud, right? So I think for anybody who's looking into this role, they have to understand maybe not all components, but maybe understand the whole, like a holistic view, like how each component work together, right? Like how cloud works into how cloud fits in, and how the programming, like Python, is getting more and more relevant, right? Before it was not really a thing, but now people need to know Python to the extent of where they can call APIs and make two devices talk to each other, right? So again, a lot of even Cisco products, AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, right? So that's becoming big, right? So if you can do some courses on these kind of things, that's going to help you a lot, right? I mean, if you were talking to me 5 years ago, I would have been telling you something totally different. But that's the reality we live in now, right? We have to constantly keep on learning, and these are the things that we have to learn, and these are the things that are top of mind for the hiring managers right now.
Hmm. That is certainly, one of those required skills as part of the future of work that we'd always talk about. But other than the technical certifications and, building technical skills, what soft skills or non-technical skills would you think are very much needed for this role that, anybody should start building on?
That's a great point, and in our schools, especially in the schools where I went to, I mean, we focus mostly on the hard skills, but nobody really talk about the soft skills, right? But I think soft skills are equally important, if not more important, especially in this role, right? So you have, I mean, for a good SE, you have to be like you have to be good with communication, right? You have to, and with good communication, I not only mean good in talking, but you should also be able to listen and like understand what's not being said, right? So you should be able to read between the lines and find out what the customer is trying to say. And sometimes along the way you'll find some opportunity that okay, maybe we can help the customer out in this with something that they're not even openly discussing, but I feel that's a pain point for them, right? So you should be able to identify the pain points, and you should be good with presentation and all that, so that comes along. But yeah, I mean, soft skills is a huge part of it, and I wish that they taught more of that in schools than they actually do.
I completely agree with you. And one thing that I regret that not spending time in learning those soft skills is basically the time that I spent in college and universities where nobody teaches you that kind
Right.
of an asset, because you only learn this when you go into the field and you learn from your mentors and your seniors. So
Right.
definitely, guys who are watching this, you should also focus on learning these soft skills and the key interpersonal skills that are very much needed in these kind of roles. Sorry, Saad, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to quickly add something. Sorry to interrupt, Yasin, but yeah, I mean, if you see some books back there, there's some technical books, but I mean, I try to like develop my soft skills. I think this is like learning is a lifelong thing, and it ends with you when you end the life. But yeah, so I think it's a lifelong journey, right? So on the phone when I'm running, or when I go out or when I'm working out, right? I used to listen to songs, but now I'm like trying to listen to books, so I can spend my time positively. And when I come back from gym, I'm not only spending time on my like physical health, but also on my mental health, and I'm also learning something while I'm doing that, right? So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the term work-life balance is also changing. Like what we used to know about work-life balance is not the same now, because people used to work in the office and then they cut off their time spent in the office when they go home. But now this is all changing because we all are working from home and we are always on work. As soon as we start reading emails on our mobile phone or reading an article just to get up to date, this is all part of the work and it never stops. So
Right.
that's a very good point. I think it will be interesting to see how this will change over time and affect our lifestyle going forward.
Or if this will ever change, right? So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's true as well. All right, Syed, thank you very much for spending time with us. I think this is very helpful and hope everybody who is watching this should learn and implement something in their career to become a good SE. And a last thing I want to share with the audience is this session has been um, recorded on a Cisco WebEx collaboration platform with Cisco headset that we both of us are using. So that's the platform that we use to work our jobs. We both are working from home, and it doesn't feel like we are working from home based upon the experience. So once again, thank you very much, Saad.
Thank you, Yasin, and I appreciate the opportunity and for interviewing me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.